I want to talk about why adding serialized cards into Pokemon the way that it is now would be a terrible idea. First, we have to talk about why Pokemon has survived for the last 25 years. I think personally, it's because they have always catered towards kids. The video games are tailored towards kids. Every time a new video game comes out, and people are screaming on Twitter about, I'm 32 years old, I played the original games, can you please make a video game for me? No. Pokemon doesn't make video games for 32-year-olds, they make video games for children. They're constantly introducing new children into the Pokemon franchise via the video games, via the anime, and via the cards. One thing that makes Pokemon cards so great, as opposed to Marvel or Star Wars or those cards that are coming out today, is the entry point. The entry point to Pokemon is really reasonable in comparison. Now, we are having the raising in MSRP, so booster boxes will MSRP at like 160, and ETBs may MSRP now at 50 instead of 40, and packs are going up from $3.99 to $4.49, but ultimately, those price raises aren't too significant, and a $4.49 pack versus a $4 pack really isn't that big of a deal when you're just grabbing one, checking out, and your kid is, looking at the card aisle and saying, Mom, I want the new set of Pokemon, can I buy a pack? 50 cents isn't really going to break the bank. So what happens to these products if you introduce that high rarity chase into the way that Pokemon cards are ran right now? You just slap a 1 of 100 Charizard into the newest set and just ship everything out like you normally would. Well, here's the problem with that, and here's what I think would happen with that. The product's price would skyrocket. First of all, you wouldn't find anything on the shelves in Target because it would be scalpers galore, just like it was, back in the boom when Shining Fates was there and there wasn't enough demand. In this case, you've literally created a situation in which there's going to be way more demand than there is supply because you have a serialized card. You have a 1 of 100, 1 of 1,000. So there's only 100 or 1,000 people that can get that. So the demand is going to way outweigh the supply in this case. And a lot of people are going to be buying up that product just to flip and sell on the secondary market for astronomical prices. And we already saw what happens with that. When the scalpers go to work and they start selling things on eBay for 3 times the price, the LGSs go to work and they start saying that market is 3 times the price. So they're going to sell it for 3 times the price. And then all of the products have now 3 to 5 to 10x in price because there is that 1 of 100 Charizard chase that all of the big stonker guys want to pull. Right now, we have a great setup. We have lots of cards in all of these sets that are 1 in 500 packs, 1 in 700 packs, 1 in 1,000 packs. And anyone can buy a pack for $4.49 off the shelf and pull a Moonbryon or a card that's worth $500 raw. It's pretty insane. We already have a pretty significant chase, so adding that to it will just raise the entry point, which will exclude a lot of collectors or a lot of people who enjoy the hobby right now from being able to continue to enjoy the hobby the way that they always have been. That's not to say that all change is bad. Some change can be good, but this change will have obvious negative impact to the people who collect your product as a whole. And we're going to continue to talk about that. So you're probably saying, well, how do other card games do it? Star Wars does it. Marvel does it. How do they do it? Well, they just don't care about the entry point. I was listening to a live recently of a Marvel content creator that basically said the words, these aren't made for kids. And he was talking about Marvel booster boxes because Marvel booster boxes, the new Marvel booster boxes, because they have that numbered chase, that serialized chase, they are bought up by the top 10% of people who like Marvel and want to collect Marvel cards, and they are broken, and then they are flipped and sold to each other, to all the stonkers. And then they make money off of it, or they lose money on it, or whatever they do with it. But it is that top 5% of those Marvel collectors that are able to buy a booster box $500 on day one when the MSRP is a lot lower than that because people are chasing certain things out of that. And there are enough people out there who will pay $500 a box, and they only make a certain number of that. It's not like Pokemon where they make, 9 billion cards every year. They only make 30,000 boxes of Spider-Man metal. So the market kind of has to be the market, and the price will fall where people will want to pay for it. But what that does is it outpaces the entry point for kids. And that's one thing that I've thought about recently is like, okay, so Star Wars and Marvel, these are 2 massive IPs, but a lot of kids right now probably aren't collecting Star Wars and Marvel cards because the entry point is way too high, right? So what happens in 20 years when that 10-year-old kid is 30, like I am today, and has a bunch of disposable income that they can start putting into things that they're nostalgic for? Are they going to be nostalgic for Marvel cards? They might be nostalgic for Marvel because the MCU, the golden age of the MCU, happened when they were a child, which is great. So they might have nostalgia for that IP, which might lead them to the cards, but they're not going to have nostalgia for Marvel cards. They'll have nostalgia for the IP that will hopefully lend them to the cards that they can now afford because they haven't been able to afford it before. Or they just won't think about cards at all and they'll just continue to watch the movies and the TV shows and all the other media, and that'll be enough nostalgia for them, and they won't care about the cards because they have no attachment to the cards. Now, I believe in sports, and it might be that Marvel does this as well, but they have retail and hobby boxes. It's like two separate boxes. One of them is at Target, at Walmart, and one of them is, I think, more sold by the LGSs. And I think that in some cases, only certain boxes have a good chase. So like retail boxes, you can get like this parallel, but no one really cares about this parallel because they want these other parallels that are in the hobby boxes. And the hobby boxes, you can get the one of 100s, but the retail boxes, you can get one of 1,000 or one of 10,000 or something of that nature. So one of the boxes is clearly better to open if you're a collector than the other, and one of the boxes, I think, is usually more expensive than the other. If you introduce that to Pokemon now, the way that we've established ourselves, I think what happens is there is a divide in the collector base, and that divide happens from income. From expendable income, basically. If you're rich, if you can afford to open a $500 box, you're going to be able to open the good product, the product with the interesting chase, the product with the 1 of 100 Charizard, the product with the 1 of 1 sketch cards. And if you're a child, if you can't afford $500 boxes, you're going to be relegated to the retail box. In the retail box, you can get a special reverse holo pattern that nobody cares about. And there is no chase for serialized cards. And there's no 1 of 1 sketches in that product because we want to make it affordable for you. Well, what you've done is you've made it affordable for people, but you've removed all the fun. You've removed the chase. You've removed the idea that anyone can walk in to a Target store, pull a $4 pack off of the thing, open it, and get a $500 card out of it. You remove the opportunity for that because most of the stonkers, the collectors, the people who are going to pay $500 for a card are going to pay for the $500 for a card in the box with the chase. That's just how it would go. So you would split your base between poor people and kids and rich people who can afford $500 boxes. And I think in terms of Pokemon, I think that's a terrible idea because we want to tailor towards the next generation. We want to tailor ourselves towards kids. We want kids opening packs where they could pull, some insane looking cards or some insanely expensive cards. We want them to develop that nostalgia for the cards that they're not necessarily developing in these other hobbies where you have to spend hundreds of dollars just for one booster box. So when you split the collector base between 95% of people who can only open a boring product now and 5% of people who can open an awesome product, 95% of your collector base is going to get bored. I would get bored. I wouldn't open the retail box. I would probably just dip out of Pokemon. I would find something different. Because if I can't get anything cool out of the box that I can afford, then why would I spend money on it and why would I open it? It's just stupid. I just wouldn't do it. So this idea of you're just further dividing this idea of player and collector. And instead of just embracing how great it is right now in modern Pokemon, we, for some reason, need to add more chase. We need to make it more not feasible for most of the people in the hobby because we want more gambling and more chase because we can afford it, which I think is just kind of tone deaf. But there is one way that I think you could do something like this with Pokemon that would make more sense, and that is a company outside of Pokemon company outside of the Pokemon TCG doing a collaboration that includes serialized cards. So something like a Topps collab or something like that. Again, I've heard people talk about this a lot where they say, oh, we could do we could make more Topps cards, a Topps collab. Topps likes to do the numbered cards. You could put a 1 of 1,000 Charizard in a Topps box and have that stonk to the moon. And that doesn't affect anyone else who's collecting Pokemon. It can just be for collectors. And I think that's probably the way that you would have to do it is to make a completely separate product, completely separate company, not tied to the TCG at all. It can't affect current TCG market prices. It's just a collab in a different box where you put these serialized cards and people can go ham. Collectors can spend, $1,000 a box on it because it doesn't impact anyone else. And that's fine. That would be great. So yeah, I just think a lot of discussions around this topic, it just sounds like a lot of like 1%ers in the hobby talking about how they want more chase in modern product and not thinking about how the downstream impacts of the divisions that it could create or the burnout that people would get if they felt like they were opening a product that didn't have any chase, and the impact it would be to 95% of the hobby who could no longer afford to be a part of the cool part of the hobby. It seems like it alienates too many people. It divides the hobby into an us versus them situation that I feel like we're trying to get away from. I'm trying to help get away from all these us versus them, modern versus vintage, graded versus raw, all this bullshit that people need to fight over constantly and have drama over. Like right now we have a cohesive product that has an insane amount of chase that we should just be happy with. I'm happy with it. It's super cool. Would it be fun to have a 1,000 Charizard in something? Yeah, it would be really fun, but not in the product that I buy at the store, because if you put it in that, I won't be finding it at the store anymore.